existence here of this great hospital and medical complex is a long overdue recognition of the fact that the centre of Sydney's population, at least half of Greater Sydney's 3 million, lies in the west. Westmead's a triumph for the people who built it, and it's an honour for me to take part in these historic proceedings, and it's a matter, I think, of national significance that we're here today to join in the official opening of the Westmead Centre, which I now officially do.
So I came to Westmead from the country, from a town on the other side of the Blue Mountains, and I had to get the street directory out and look up Westmead, where is it? When I came here, I was really surprised at the size of the building. It was huge. It was the biggest building I'd ever been in. And at that time, the population wasn't here, but it was coming. The average age of the local people in the local area when I started was 2. So we had a lot of young families moving to suburbs like St Clair, the Northwest Corridor, places like Kellyville. They were rural areas with market gardens and farms, so there wasn't the development there is now. So looking back, we have to say that whoever put in the initial plans to build this hospital really had a lot of foresight. Westmead Hospital was like walking into an airport terminal. It wasn't like walking into a hospital. Back in the late 70s, this place was the most modern and vibrant building there was in Sydney. Didn't look like a hospital, didn't smell like a hospital, didn't sound like a hospital. I started my training here in 1980, and Westmead Hospital was a new hospital, and it started the way it meant to continue, with a really strong focus on clinical care, teaching and education for nursing and medical staff and allied health, and also was establishing really strong ties with the universities at the time. I've been really lucky to have had such a diverse nursing career in an organisation that's been a learning organisation and an organisation that's grown. And the thing that's kept me here is the people. The people at Westmead are the heart of the organisation.
So the concrete structure of this building is still the same as it was on the day it was built. And if we built onto it, we've changed what we do within the grid, but nothing else has changed. And you can see it all around you. As you walk around the hospital, you can see the 2 pillars running down, and I can tell you they're 40 square metres of space within that grid. It hasn't changed one iota. What we do has changed. How many people are in it? Each of those grids, their offices or their x-rays or their operating theatres or their wards, they may have 4 beds in, or they may have 2 lots of 2 beds, or they may have 2 lots of 1 bed. Different purposes, but the actual structure hasn't changed at all. It's an astonishing place, astonishing building.
We were actually a racetrack just before the hospital started, but it was a showground from the late 1850s. We were started from scratch. We were the first purpose-built university teaching hospital in New South Wales since Prince Alfred in 1860. And that's why we became so prominent so quickly. Everything was light and bright. The sun penetrated right into the wards. I'd never worked in a hospital where you didn't have to switch the lights on in the middle of right in the middle of the day. We had all these colours of the 1970s, the greens, bright greens, and the oranges and the yellows.
The building itself, the architects and the designers of the day were really impressed with the building. They laid it out in a grid work, and you could see maybe their background coming from, say, a military design. That's why we've got A, B, C and D blocks, keeping it simple. But over the years, we've now become a bit more of a warren, sandwiching in the intensive care unit, the maternity services, consolidating that at the front of the hospital. It's now an evolving sort of place, and keeping track of the changes has been interesting too, as departments move around the hospital with new floor spaces being opened.
I started working at Westmead in 1984, so that's a while ago now, and a lot of things have changed since then, but I think one of the most significant would have been the way, for nurses, the way nursing training has changed. We've gone from hospital to universities, and we had an amazing culture then. We had hats, we had uniform checks, we had people looking at us from balconies to make sure that we hadn't left a minute before our end time. We would get called back, we'd get lines, as punishment if we did the wrong thing. So there have been some huge changes. I mean, obviously our uniforms have changed. We now have outfits like this, but we used to have hats that we would starch, and we would occasionally wash more often than we told them we did. We were so excited when we got rid of those. They were thrown up here outside the Taj, because Westmead, as the biggest and newest hospital in the Southern Hemisphere then, was called the Taj by a lot of the older hospitals, because it was a huge monstrosity at that time in their eyes compared to what had been here. So it was really quite different, yeah. So when we started nursing, we attended with our parents. We all met in the auditorium. We had to sit there and listen to a long story about what it would mean to be a nurse, what sort of things our families could expect, and they insisted that our families were there. Once our lace-up shoes were on, if they had a heel, we'd measure from the ground to the length of our skirt, because our skirts for our uniforms had to sit a couple of inches below the knee, and that was really, really religiously checked. The same with the integrity of our stockings. If you had underpants that could be seen through the uniform, just as the outline, that didn't look like they were demure, they were out, you had to go. With our hats, we had 1 centimetre of hair was allowed to be showing, no more, no less, no makeup, no earrings, nothing.
Back in those days, all the resident staff wore white coats, and I gave it up very reluctantly. And I just wanted to say that it's mostly because we had to wear dresses. We weren't allowed to wear trousers back in those days, so you needed copious pockets to carry all the equipment that you needed on the wards in those days. Everybody gave them up when the hospital stopped washing them, of course.
It was a fresh new hospital. It had that feel to it, brought a lot of enthusiasm to the place, and that was infectious.
I found the hospital to be huge. It was very easy to lose your way. I found it to be an excellent hospital, and I was encouraged to stay, and I've done that. There's been a huge growth in clinical services and the number of clinics on offer, but I think the highlights for me are the team working together towards a common goal of good patient care, and that's really what wakes us up in the morning and brings us to work and makes us feel great.
It's been a wonderful opportunity. I've loved Westmead. I never expected to come back. I did my final year of training, and then I came back 4 years later as a consultant, having worked as a consultant in Europe, and it was just a great opportunity, and one of which I guess I've never regretted and always appreciated. And so I feel very much part of Westmead now. It's a very friendly environment. My happiest place, I have to say, is in the operating theatre, and so I love being there, and I love the staff, the nurses in particular, and so it's that sort of friendly environment that welcomes you back, and that's what I love about Westmead.
Mentors, Peter Castaldi and Miles Little, ensured that every department head was a researcher, which is quite unusual and one of the attractions to come to Westmead Hospital.
The hospital said to me, "What would you like to do your work?" And I said, "I'd like a fax machine." And they said, "Oh, I don't know that. I don't think you can have that. We've already got one in the hospital, one fax." No, I mean, fax has come and fax has gone. We've now got email and all the rest of it. The big scanners, nothing. A lot of the technology that we take for granted now, nothing. So things have changed dramatically. The face of medical management and our insights into how to do effective preventive work in the community have grown. We're much better at that than we were then. So there have been big shifts over those years.
I'm the director of the Westmead Breast Cancer Institute. But my first day as an intern, I shall never forget those very, very long corridors, B4A, C5C, C5A, walking up and down those corridors and doing the long 24-hour shifts. Yeah, there's some fairly fond memories. It took a group of people with high levels of dedication to come together as a team to build this cancer service now. And it is now my responsibility as director of that service to keep it going and keep their vision alive and to take it to the next level. So breast cancer has really come leaps and bounds. We went from a time when we didn't have a consolidated breast cancer service, when mortality rates were higher than the rest of New South Wales for breast cancer, and now where we have one of the best survival rates from breast cancer, the best treatment, the latest research. So I feel very proud to be part of that.
I'm the head of the Department of Rehabilitation Medicine and clinically work in the brain injury rehab unit at Westmead. One of the areas that we've been a bit of a pioneer in has been in the management of spasticity in traumatic brain injury. I think that's one area that we've developed over the years. It wasn't something we were doing when we first opened the unit down there, but something we became familiar with and we developed, and a lot of other units around Sydney and Australia are using those treatments now as well. Just about everyone who comes through our unit comes into our unit in a very vulnerable state, a very dependent state, and to see the majority of those people get to a situation where they can walk out your door, get back to living at home with their family, feeding themselves and managing their own hygiene and getting back into social living. It's almost like every case is extraordinary in terms of what they can achieve.
It was a place that was just bubbling with energy and vision and innovation. Great leaders. We had vision about how we might shape the service. And because we based that on collection of information, collection of data and clinical audit, we developed a lot of material from which teaching could be constructed. And subsequently, teaching became, really from quite early stages, from 1985 onwards, teaching and learning became a major part of what we did.
I think the biggest change in radiation oncology at Westmead Hospital is definitely the technology. So I think computerisation, there's no way we could have achieved the precision of radiation treatment that we do nowadays 40 years ago. What hasn't changed in 40 years is the focus we have on our patient care and in our training and education programs along with research which were embedded into radiation oncology at Westmead right from the day one.
Westmead used to be a retro colour, so we had the greens and the oranges and the golds, and they were really quite nasty. Now the wards look much more, they're much better for the patients, I think. There was such camaraderie with the nurses, and a lot of people lived in at the nurses' home as well, which was just down the back, and so there was lots of parties and lots of good memories from Westmead Hospital. So even now there's great teamwork, and the people are what make Westmead. We have such a great lot of nurses and doctors and the podiatrists and physios and the cleaners, and of course we can't forget all of the porters and people, because we all work together. They are an absolutely great team. So Westmead gives me such great memories from right back in 1980 till now.
We had a young girl was holidaying here from America in Queensland and was doing a diving course. She got into difficulties, and cut a long story short, she finished up in ICU with us. She was a very sick girl for a long period of time, and she's come back 3 or 4 times and visited us after being cured from what she had, and she could have died many times over that period, but through the care she got and through the good doctoring, she's still around today. And she often comes back and we hug. You can't hug and you cry, you know, and all that sort of thing. It's I'm even getting emotional now thinking about it, but yeah, they're beautiful times like that.
The one thing that's actually remained constant is the fantastic group of patients we have, and they've been the greatest joy in working at this hospital, and every day is a new challenge, but they come to Westmead because we're a centre of research and clinical excellence.
One could easily see the depth of expertise that was here, and fairly soon, I guess, as a recognition of that, I was thinking to myself, if ever I had a relative that had a particular illness that needed the highest level of care, this would be a place that I would want that relative to be looked after in.
One of the other big things that I really have noticed in my time has been how we have seen a huge culture change in the way we're doing it. When I was young, the way I was taught is you're the doctor, you're the one who has the knowledge, you're the one to make the decisions, and all these other people will do what you say. It never worked. Now there's been this huge culture change in patient care, and basically the way we run things is, as a doctor, I've got a lot to offer, but so do the physiotherapists, so do the nurses, so do the occupational therapists, and as a team we work out what we're doing for patients. It is so much better way of doing business.
I'm the manager of the library here at Westmead Hospital. I've been here since early 1986, and certainly over that period there's been major changes both for the library as well as the hospital as a whole. When I first started, we kind of had one computer in the library that used to let us dial up to the National Library to do searches for everybody. These days we have computers everywhere, Wi-Fi, all of those kind of things to help people with it. In the past, the librarians used to have to do all the database searching for everybody. We used to have to do special courses to be able to do that for people. Now it's come to a stage where we can assist people to do them still, of course, but we like to be able to train our staff so that they can do them themselves, or we can help them with them, and that's all about getting the best evidence-based practice medicine, so they're the better people to know to help you and provide the very best services here.
If someone says to me, "What do you do?" I said, "I do volunteer work in the hospital." They say, "Oh, that's very good. You are doing something for the people." I said, "That is only one part of it. I'm doing for myself." Because let's look at me. If I wasn't doing this, what would I be doing, honestly? I have to find out something, but I don't think anything will be as interesting as this.
When I first started in 1985, the pharmacy department was in its infancy. The director of pharmacy actually started at Westmead before the hospital opened in 1978, and he designed the department, and it was cutting edge for its day. When I came in 1985, there were no computers, no mobile phones, and that probably, if you ask me, one big game changer for hospital pharmacy was the advent of computers. So that meant suddenly, instead of typing labels on a manual typewriter, and if you made a mistake you had to retype it, suddenly we had a legible label, and everything was stored in the computer, and we had data. And that was a massive game changer for us, because suddenly we had a dispensing record on our patients so we could see what they had had before. And we had that legibility as well, and we were able to use computers for our inventory management, and also to look at how drugs were being used in the hospital and how we could improve on that. To get the prescriptions down to pharmacy, we have what we call a yellow copy, which we take out of the medication chart, and we cite the medication copy in the wards, and then what we used to do was send it through the lamps and tube system so that we had a copy in pharmacy to dispense off. And then we used to call out lots of yellows, because suddenly we had the dispensary flooded full of yellows. But the interesting thing was the tube system. It made such a big noise, and our tubes would often go astray. And sometimes we'd get tubes from other departments that weren't meant for us, like specimens and so on. And so sometimes we had to go and search for the tube with all the prescriptions in it so that we could get them dispensed.
I virtually started working here in October 1978. Made up the beds in the first ward, B3A, so we could expect the first patient, who was Queenie Murray. During that time, there were 7 resident doctors appointed to work at Westmead, and they were actually called the Magnificent 7. So yes, it was quite a good time, because having only 7 doctors, and we've got all nurses, 100 nurses in the hospital, and that's how it all started. A lot of changes that have happened. First of all, the green carpet in the cafeteria is gone. We used to hold a lot of parties down there, especially in the special functions room previously. When we held our Christmas celebrations, we used to get free ham, turkey, roast pork for Christmas. We don't get that now, but anyway. signs of times. The first coffee shop was opened, right? That was 1988. Darcy Cafe. I won a $50 voucher for naming that cafe. Wow. Anyway, that was good. And we were able to smoke in the wards, and you know, now that's a big no-no, thank goodness. Yes, so a lot has changed.
I work in the orderly department. When I started here back in 1989, 29 years ago, in 2 weeks' time, I was actually a wards man. I was the first permanent wards woman to become a wardsman in the wards. And then now, 30 years down almost, they've got heaps of women employed in my position. So we're called actually, first it was wards persons, but now we've joined the porters. So we're in with the porters and they call us orderlies.
Yeah, I've been associated with Westmead Hospital now for close to 40 years. I think I've seen most of the areas of the hospital. I have worked as an administrator, I've worked as a consultant, I've had children born here, I've had a child die here. I've had a wife who's had treatment in palliative care. I have been a patient here myself. And I think it's the most amazing place that I've ever come across as far as hospitals are concerned. The level of ability of the people who work here, and I've been very proud to be part of the entire 40-year process.
Ever since Westmead Hospital opened, it was the centre, well, people perceived as the centre of excellence, and it tended to be like a magnet. All patients wanted to come to Westmead or the Westmead Kids Hospital when it opened up next door.
You have in New South Wales are so lucky. There's nowhere else in the country they have this kind of being able to work in a big teaching hospital like this. So that's great for our undergraduates.
I work now with people that were my third year nurses when I was a brand new nurse out of PTS, and I really appreciate the mentorship that they showed me. I think that's one of those really valuable things about being here and actually doing my nurses training at Westmead. We were the West Metropolitan Group School of Nursing then. We travelled across other hospitals, but we were in essence a family. We grew up together across a number of years, and people tended to stay here. But they were really great foundations. They made us be the kind of nurses you want to have looking after you, just that thoroughness. And I learnt an enormous amount. But I still bump into colleagues now that I've known since I was 17. And I'm proud to be associated with them. I'm proud of their achievements. We've gone on between all of us that I've known in that time to do many different things. Some people are directors of nursing in other places, some people are researchers, some are remaining clinicians at the bedside, really committed to this amazing care. But I've learnt so much from all those people, and this really was a wonderful place to grow up, because I did grow up here, and to learn from all these people, be part of an extended Westmead family was fabulous.
Before the time of applications and the communication directory's application on the internet, we had the red communications directory. This is where you had to go to find anybody's extension number, anybody's page number. The part that was really tricky was the Institute of Clinical Pathology and Medical Research. Who would know which lab you had to ring, etc. So it had its own little section in the book. So these books were like Bibles, and if anybody lost the red book, big trouble. So Westmead Hospital and Community Health Services, this is the version from 2013, but believe you me, they were there a lot longer than that.
So I started as an intern in 1992. To my area of practice, it's completely changed. Even from when I finished training as the fellow in 2002, there's virtually nothing that I do surgically now that I was trained to do. Everything has changed, either heavily modified or completely changed. You go and listen to other people's work and get an appreciation of how great an institution Westmead is, the breadth of talent that we have. It's going to continue to grow. It's an exciting time to be part of a great institution such as Westmead. I think it's going to be a very dynamic place to work at, both clinically, from a research perspective. I think it's going to bring a lot of resources to Western Sydney, and I think it's really going to put us on the map.
Look, I think being part of the original Westmead development was a very exciting time. There are a lot of young people coming together and being able to realise the general vision for the place. But I think with the new developments now, and it's nice to be able to say this at the 40th anniversary, there's another era of excitement and redevelopment and promise and opportunity.
And I came here because of the redevelopment that was happening within Westmead, the health precinct, and the great opportunities that presents. Also because of the history and the culture around Westmead. This place is renowned for doing some fantastic work. There are internationally recognised clinicians here for some of the great things that they do, as they should be. And I'd like to think that as we move into the future, we can enhance on that work. And the health precinct for me is a really important part of how we can manage that.
So the refurbishments is a bit like working on the block. but for it to actually be like Westmead block, Westmead Hospital block. So we've got this old building, we've got these old wards. How can we transform it into something that the block judges will be proud of? Yep, so that's for me what the refurbishment is all about. To transform something that's old into something that looks new and functional, to be functional for the patient's need and to allow us to facilitate a patient-centred care approach, new models of care.
I think Westmead Hospital is central to the entire precinct. It's basically the bit that connects the precinct together, and the future Westmead Hospital will be no different. It'll be basically a large hub of collaboration and connectivity between the hospital, government organisations, you'll have local businesses and employers, and also education, research and training providers involved, whereby collectively they will assist in reinvesting back into the hospital, delivering long-term solutions in a far more sustainable way. So very exciting times ahead for everyone at Westmead.